Hello everyone, I'm Dr.V.Srividhya from Dr.V.Srividhya. The subject which I'm going to discuss now is cost management for BCom 6th semester. Topic is business process re-engineering. We'll see what is this business process re-engineering. It's the fundamental rethinking and radical redesign of business processes to achieve dramatic improvements in critical contemporary measures of performance such as cost, quality, service, and speed. As the topic name itself indicates, it is re-engineering. Re-engineering is already the organization will be undergoing certain process for the manufacturing. What they have to do is redesigning it and rethinking, and it's a radical redesign of business processes. So, if any alternative design is used, what will be the outcome of it and what's the improvement that is going to give regarding the cost quality service has to be checked out. So this is a contemporary measures of performance. So on the whole we can tell that it is a process where there is a radical redesign of business for the improvement of the organization, taking into consideration all the factors such as cost, quality, service, and speed. What are the components which has to be taken into consideration for this business process re-engineering is strategy. That is each organization have their own policies and procedures for a long-term plan. That has to be taken into consideration and that has to be redesigned. The strategy itself has to be redesigned and the organization has to be taken into consideration because this is going to happen in the organization. So what all is required from the organization has to be taken into consideration. Process, the process itself has to be redesigned. So that is also one of the main component of business process re-engineering. Technology, what are the technologies they have to change or improve technologies has to be used. This has to be analyzed, and for all this the culture also is very important. And what are the steps that has to be undertaken for this business process re-engineering is first you have to define the outcomes. What will be the outcomes of this process and define the current state. First, after taking into consideration or implementing this business process re-engineering, what will be the outcome and what is the current state. So these two has to be taken into consideration and we have to identify the gaps. Gaps is very important as we do in our research by taking the review of literature and identifying the gaps, and based on the gaps we have to frame the hypothesis. So similarly here also, what is the current state and what is we are going to redesign it and what will be the outcome. So when this gap is identified, we have to select one test case. So immediately it can't be implemented. This has to be given testing. So what is the test case we are going to utilize it, going to use it, and based on that we have to test the hypothesis. We have to develop and test the hypothesis. After all this process is undertaken, we have to implement the new process. So it's not like we have to redesign some process and immediately it can't be implemented. It has to undergo all these steps and it has to undergo the test hypothesis and then develop that and then implement the new process. Once the new process is implemented, we have to see how it is carried on and what is the outcome of it. After verifying, we have to evaluate the performance. So this all has to be taken into consideration and the performance will be evaluated after this re-engineering has taken place. What is the outcome and what is the performance? This has to be studied. What are the benefits of this is it streamlines business processes and systems. So the like what our process has been undertaken before, now it will be streamlined. It will be in a systematic manner it will be carried on and companies easily adapt to changing times and reduce operating expenses. So once an organization comes to know the operating expenses will be reduced because of this, the cost reduction will be there. They try to adapt to the changes. and in turn this improve company profitability and sustain competitive advantage. All this techniques, why it is undertaken, finally it is nothing but to improve the profitability of the organization. So obviously when all this is followed, it will improve the company's profitability, and also we can sustain the competitive advantage which is happening right now, and it is the important aspect which has to be taken into consideration. And in turn it also boosts the employee productivity. And finally all this has been done only for the customer satisfaction and for the customers loyalty. When the customer becomes loyal to the product is only when they are satisfied about the product. So what happens is it increases customer satisfaction by improving the quality of products and services. This business process re-engineering is done after taking into aspects all the consideration. Redesigning is done. So here the main idea what the organization should have ultimately is customer satisfaction. So when all this is undertaken by testing the hypothesis and all, finally the outcome also will be good. When the outcome is good, definitely the customer will be satisfied. Customer satisfaction is the indication of the development of the organization. And what are the principles that has to be followed for any business process re-engineering is organize around outcomes, not tasks. So your the importance and due importance should be given to the outcomes. What will be the outcome when this has been implemented? When all these activities are carried on, finally the result what we expect is the outcome. So how is the outcome that has to be organized? Identify all the organization processes and prioritize them in order of redesign actions. See, so what is more important has to be taken into consideration and it has to be redesigned. Integrate information processing work into the real work that produces the information. All this has to be integrated in the processing work, and the work has to be real work which produces the information. Treat geographically dispersed resources as though they were centralized. So here in any organization, all the resources will not be centralized. So that first has to be taken into consideration. Wherever it is dispersed, that has to be treated as though they were centralized and taken into consideration for the better performance. Link parallel activities in the workflow instead of just integrating their results. So all the parallel activities has to be linked so that finally the integrating of the results should be fine. Put, put the decision point where the work is performed and build control into the process. So wherever the decision point has to be taken into consideration, that has to be given importance, and that when it is taken into consideration, that will build control over the process. Capture information once and at the source. Always the information has to be captured at each and every process wherever this business process re-engineering is happening, and also at the source. So when all this is taken into consideration, the business process re-engineering will definitely will give a very good result, and this is one of the best technique that can be utilized, because only when the change is happening in the organization, definitely the development also will take place. Just if you stick on to one method or one single process or how it is carried on, if this is going to continue, the development of the organization will not take place. So, for anything that matters, we have to always keep a pace with the change, and that too, right now, the technological advancements is taking place to a very great extent. So, all this has to be taken into consideration. Means the business reprocess has to be implemented very often. For that, whatever is necessary action that has to be taken into consideration. And if all this is happening, then that will give a very good result. So this till now in all the sessions we have discussed about the different techniques of cost reduction. And the final technique which now we have discussed, one of the final technique which we have discussed is business process re-engineering. If this is taken into consideration and implemented properly, definitely there will be cost reduction, and this cost reduction will lead to the reduction in the price, and reduction in price will lead to the demand of the product, and This is like one cycle, it goes on and on. So all the factors has to be taken into consideration, and all these techniques what all we discussed has to be taken into consideration, whichever fits best for the organization, that has to be selected and implemented. If all this is done, definitely cost reduction can happen. Thank you all for watching this video.